In November last year, 2019, I did a range comparison test between a gas car, a Toyota Corolla, a hybrid, our 2008 Toyota Prius, and a all-electric, our 2015 Tesla Model S. I wanted to see how many real-world miles you could put on in 8 hours with each type of vehicle if you only stopped for gas, food, or charging. The results were the Prius with 531 miles, the Corolla with 510 miles, and the Model S with 463 miles. Now, I doubt the results will change overall, but it's always gnawed on me that I didn't quite get the best out of the Model S in that test, and it bothered me even that day. You see, I had a safe charging plan that I thought was a good idea, but really it meant I ended up having to slow down and draft behind a semi to make it to one of the charging stops. And had I just gone a little further and added an extra charging stop, I could have kept my speed up the whole time, and I think that would have been a better plan. So that's the plan for tomorrow. Now, the weather's pretty similar to the test we did last year. It's a little colder. It's going to be about 16 degrees when we leave here at 9 a.m. But I wanted to make sure I got this test in because we're hopefully getting a Model Y in 2021. And I want to have this benchmark test of what I think will be the best we can get out of the Model S compared to when I do this test again with the Model Y. And hopefully that really tells the story of how much the technology has advanced in 5 years. Like the temperature, not everything's going to be equal to last year's test. The car is obviously a year older, has 20,000 more miles on it, and different tires. Right now I think we're sitting around 115,000 miles. So that will be a difference. I've also got my co-pilot with me, and that should be fun. But if there are any kid-related delays, I'll be sure to add that time back in at the end of the test so it's a consistent amount of 8 hours. But enough of me talking about it. Let's hit the road. Good morning. We are on the road and it is about 10:48 in the morning. We got a very late start. Left home at 10:30 with about 98% battery. So it was saying somewhere in the neighborhood of 247 miles, I believe, if you switch it over to miles. The roads are really clear, which is nice. I was a little concerned because we had quite a bit of snow a couple days ago. At first I was thinking there was no wind, but it turns out the wind is going straight toward us. I just saw some flags just straight on vertical toward us. So I'll have to do a little calculating on the way down to make sure that we can make it to Dow's, Iowa without stopping at Albert Lee, see what our watt hour per mile is, and look on the energy graph as to how much projected range we're getting once we get through about 30 miles here, so I get a good reading of what the wind is doing. It was supposed to be sunny today. I thought this would be a nice, beautiful drive. So far, the clouds have not burned off, so hopefully we get a little more scenic as the day rolls on. But we're on the move, and we'll see how this goes. We just passed the border into Iowa at 11:47, so about an hour and 17 minutes from leaving home, which I think is pretty consistent from the results we had last year. So that tells me the traffic patterns are probably pretty similar to what we were experiencing then. So we're about 60 miles away from Dow's. That headwind is really cutting into our range. On the energy graph, it says we have now 59 miles and 53 miles to Dow's, so we're going to be cutting it close. What that tells me, though, is that on the way back north, we should be getting great efficiency because we should have that wind pushing us. So Joan's being good. We were dancing and singing here, and she's doing a great job, having a little licorice lunch until we get to Dow's. Just rolling on. We are about 11 miles from Dow's and down to 7%. The energy graph says we have 12 miles of range left. I'm going to try to get up behind the semi here and draft the last few miles. Hopefully we'll be able to squeak by and keep our speed up. The wind is pretty intense coming up here. And we're down to about 21 degrees. Yeah, I'm getting the plan your next charge warning here. So we're going to be cutting it close, but hopefully the next time I talk to you, it will be plugged in Dow's. Well, we made it to Dow's just by the skin of our teeth. It was very close. We had 0% for about a half mile. I didn't stop at the stop sign at the top of the exit ramp because I wasn't sure that we would make it. There weren't any cars coming. It was totally clear, so it was okay, but definitely nerve-wracking. So jumped out, plugged in right away. That was definitely the most dicey stretch I've had. We were able to keep our speed up the whole time. I drafted behind a truck for the last 2 or 3 miles. That slowed us down to about 72 and probably is the only reason we made it in. But I'm going to see how much we need to get to West Des Moines. We're going to grab some lunch and hopefully make this a very quick stop. Just in the time I've been talking, we've already jumped up from 0 to 9%. So yeah, this low point in the battery pack does charge pretty fast. So I'm going to check the charging plan, get her taken care of, and we will hopefully be on the road pretty quickly. We made it past Dow's. The sun has come out. We had to change a diaper when we got there after I plugged in. Then went inside and grabbed some lunch to go. Pretty much ready to roll by about 1:12, and then stayed till 1:32 because we had to give the co-pilot some lunch, and we could have come right back out of Arby's and got on the road. I overcharged there. I'm not quite sure how I'm going to figure the math on that. This isn't quite as scientific as last year's, where I was flying solo and quick, but like last year, this is real life driving scenarios, so there's some value to seeing that too, I think. Looks like we're about 10 miles away from Ames, so kind of loop around the north end of Des Moines over to West Des Moines. It's 2:30, so this would be the point where we would have turned around if we were on schedule time-wise, and we're at 224 miles. I'll check back in 20 minutes to see where we are with that time delay at the last stop. We should probably be close to West Des Moines by that point. We pulled in at 2:49, which would have been the offset 20 minutes from the Dow's stop. And when we pulled in, we had about 242 miles. So accounting for the extra time, that would be the halfway mark. But like I said, we'll see where we go the rest of the day. So we're doing pretty well, and gonna wrap up this charge hopefully very quickly and be back on the road. We're on our way back up to Dow's and just cruising along. We stopped at Dow's for about a half an hour, a little longer than I normally would have or would have needed to, but again had to use the restroom and do little extracurriculars around there. Lost a couple shoes in the parking lot, that kind of normal stuff. So that took a little bit longer than I probably would have stayed, somewhere between 5 and 10 minutes longer. So we'll see. I'll maybe add 5 minutes to the end like I did with the Dow's stop of 20 minutes. So right now the total extra will go to average out will be 25 minutes. One thing that's super cool this year is there are so many Teslas on the road. Last year, once I got out of the Minneapolis metro area, I really only saw maybe 2, I think only 1, the whole stretch down to Des Moines and back. And that was pretty average every day with all 3 of those cars last year. Today, I've seen probably more Teslas on the highway here than I have when I was near Minneapolis. So that's super cool. The superchargers seem a little busier. I know the other time it wasn't near a holiday, and today is New Year's Eve, so that might account for some of it. But I've seen at least 6 individual Teslas, like just passing or I'm passing them on the highway, which is really cool. I even saw a BMW i3 a couple minutes ago. So there's a huge jump in electric vehicles on the road just from last year. Joan's wrestling with her owl and we're listening to Disney songs, and we're just enjoying the drive as the sun has come out now and it's behind us, so we're getting a nice, not exactly sunset yet, but it will be shortly, and nice clear skies. One other thing I don't think I've mentioned last year or earlier today was that this vehicle does not have navigation, and so as I'm approaching a supercharger, I can't precondition the battery. So as far as the battery knows, when I get to a supercharger, it's like, oh hey, didn't know you were coming. So that might be a little bit slower than the average Model S of this vintage, just because most cars have the navigation feature. Just a little bit of difference that might be changing this one's results to what other people might get. We are back in Dow's, and it is about 4:40. It's about when I plugged in, maybe a little earlier. No problem getting back here. Plenty of charge to do that. Our next stop is 71 miles away in Albert Lea. So right now we've got 28 miles of range according to the energy graph. That's based off of how we've been traveling north on the interstate. So now up to 29 miles. So that's going to get up to 71 pretty fast. So don't have a lot of time to stop here, and that's good. We're going to run in, do another restroom pit stop, and hopefully be on our way pretty quickly. Since I mentioned how many Teslas I've seen today, I saw 3 more right after I recorded that piece. So lots of Teslas on the road, which is super cool. I haven't seen a lot of other EVs other than the i3, but the more the merrier. So we just left Dow's, and we needed about 73 miles to get up to Albert Lea. So on the energy graph, we charged to 85. So hopefully that pans out, that we still have about 10 miles spare. Looks like we should be getting there about 6:03. So close to the end of the official test, but we'll see how that goes. We'll play it by ear. The roads are clear, sun's going down, and we're just putting miles on now. We'll see how we go. We pulled into Albert Lea at about 6:04 p.m., but someone is full of beans. We've been supercharging for roughly 5 minutes. We need about 80 to get home, so probably charge up to about 90 miles according to our energy graph. We're also trying to keep an eye on the time, since this is a time challenge. We are 20 minutes away from the official deadline, so we'll see if we're back on the road. Right now we're at 404 miles, considerably less than last year, but we did have some slowdowns. So yeah, we're just going to run into McDonald's, get her some dinner quick, and hit the road. We should be ready to roll by the time we're back in the car. So that's the plan, and we'll catch you on the way back north. It is 6:54, so if we add our 24 minutes of what I would consider extra time, eating and doing diapers and things that alone I would have obviously not been doing, that puts us at 430 miles. So that's pretty terrible. I'll have to kind of get back to the office and crunch some numbers, but we did add one extra charging stop, but I thought we were a little more efficient with most of them. And I'm not sure that 24 extra minutes is really valid, so I might need to average the 404 we had when we were in Albert Lea and the 430 that we had at 6:54. So I thought we were really going to have a great result today, and that's kind of a bummer, but we'll get back to the office, crunch the numbers, see how it compares to last year and the other vehicles, and then eventually we'll see how it compares to the Model Y. So I'm back in the studio now and feeling pretty stupid. Those numbers are terrible compared to last year, and even my longer range estimate of the two is not really valid. You see, the time I spent extra at the charger, if I take that time off, I also would have had to unplug, which I didn't. So that meant every time we were there for longer, I was still charging, and that meant we got to the next charger needing less charge. It's a mess. But looking into it further, the differences between 2019 and 2020, I found that not only was the temperature difference roughly 20 degrees, which is okay, again, real world, but also my tires were between 10 and 15 pounds underinflated. And that's another variable that can really suck the range. But when you get a dumb result, the dumb get going. So a couple days later, I did the full 8-hour trip again, solo. And I won't take you through the whole trip a third time, but I will add in the B-roll here so you can see that I actually did it. I set off at 3:20 in the afternoon with 99% and hit the same route, arriving in Dow's at 5:27 in time to catch the sunset. 33 minutes later, I was leaving for West Des Moines, sure that I could make up time, but of course still sticking to that 75 mile an hour limit, which meant that the travel time was the same, although traffic was lighter. At 7:15, I plugged in West Des Moines for another 33 minutes, this time hitting the halfway mark of the trip mid-charge. I was ahead, but not by much. Another slight delay was the supercharger stopping from some fault or other for a couple minutes. After stopping into the Hy-Vee, I got an alert on my phone of the problem, but I was able to unplug and plug back in on the same pedestal without an issue. At 7:48, I hit the road again, back north, wondering if I would be getting the same results. By the time I got to Dow's again, it was 9:04, I was doing mental gymnastics, trying to sort out why this trip would be much different than the last one, and why it would fall below 2019's run. I left Dow's again, crossed the border, and of course got to the Albert Lea supercharger with 402 miles, almost the exact same as before, which makes sense. And here's where the light bulb started turning on. On these new trips, I was following better charging practices if my goal had been to keep traveling past the 8-hour mark. But the test was capped at 8 hours, and at the end of the 2019 test, I was at a low state of charge. So my quote-unquote better charging plan from this year actually meant less time driving within the time frame. So instead of charging to get home at Albert Lea, I just charged up 60 miles so I could do a loop and be back here after the test, near zero. This got me back on the road in 18 minutes and gave me 34 minutes of driving time to wrap up the test. So at 11:20 that night, the test ended with 443 miles traveled in 8 hours, still 20 miles fewer than the 2019 result. The variables in the age of the car and roughly 20-degree colder temperature I'm sure played a part, but there was also less traffic. Now I think the takeaway is if you're getting a good charging speed, and by staying a couple extra minutes you can skip a charger in the future, it probably makes sense to do that. Because each stop isn't just the charging curve. It's getting off the highway, intersections, stoplights, parking and plugging in, and then doing the reverse on the way back out. So again, if you're getting a good charge rate and can skip a future stop, it probably makes sense to stay put. Now this is where being human comes into play. I was thinking how I would run this test again in a Model Y that's more efficient and would have a range around 300 miles. Technically, you should be able to get to West Des Moines without stopping to charge, especially in good weather. So I reached out to some friends in the Minnesota Tesla owners group and asked what their experiences were with the newer, longer range vehicles. And people from that group confirmed that they had been able to do it, that trip and similar distances elsewhere. However, most people who responded said even if they could, they wouldn't because of biology. It's a 230-mile drive from my house to the West Des Moines supercharger, and that's about 3.5 hours at highway speeds. If you're drinking coffee or water or eating snacks, you might need to make a stop along the way anyway, even if it's just for a stretch. You might want to get out for 5 minutes. And if you're stopping for 5 minutes, you may as well make that stop in Albert Lea or Dow's, where you can plug in the meantime. And even if you just pick up a couple miles, it can't hurt. And this brings me back to the trip with my daughter. Even though it was the shortest distance, I couldn't have pushed her much faster. We needed all of those stops and, for the most part, needed all that time while we were at them. So even this older car with the lower range can keep up with the speed of children. 404 miles is a lousy result, but it was a real-world trip. On the solo trip, getting 443 miles or even the 463 miles from 2019 is okay, but not great. I'm looking forward to the Model Y test and hopefully getting that car up into the 500-mile ranges closer to where the Corolla and the Prius were. The more initial range, the faster charging capabilities, and the more efficient vehicle should all add up to more driving and less time stopped, which, even to this idiot, should be pretty obvious that will give us more miles traveled in an 8-hour test. So thanks for watching. Stay tuned for that test with the Model Y, and I'll catch you in the next one.